What's up, everybody? This is Brendan. I'm a full stack developer based in Brooklyn, New York. Today, I'm going to be walking you through the solution for the calendar project, and we are going to be talking about a bunch of different things. We're first going to touch on Route Provider. Basically, Route Provider gives us the ability to map certain URLs that a user's on to specific controllers and views. We're also going to be touching on route params, which is the way that you are able to, based on what URL a user is currently on, you can define a dynamic variable inside that URL. And through route params, you're able to grab that dynamic variable from that URL and use it to your advantage. The context here is we're going to be linking to a bunch of events on a calendar. When you click on a particular event, you're actually going to be taken to a URL based on what event that you clicked on. So how are we able to do this? We're going to be using the ng repeat directive, which gives us access to the index of the particular event that we're iterating over. And then as we're iterating over that event, what we're going to do is we're going to create an A tag and make the href of that A tag link to the ID of that particular event that we're currently iterating over. And then also we're going to set up a route through the route provider so that everything kind of connects and that the controller and the view all seamlessly work together. And last but not least, we're also going to be touching back on something that we covered in a few projects back, which is setting up a service. So kind of all culminating in this one big project, and I hope you're ready. All right, so let us begin. Calendar is creating an AngularJS app for their calendar service. Here's what it looks like. All right, so we've got all these events. And notice when you click on a particular event, the screen kind of dynamically changes and you see the information about that one particular event. And let's say when you go to taco time, see how the content actually changes. This is what we're going to be replicating. This is pretty sweet. This is connecting services and routes and controllers and views all together. So I hope you're ready. Let's do it. Step one, in the view, inside the head element, include the Angular route.js as a new script element. Okay, so let's go to our index.html. And I'm going to copy and paste the script here. But I am going to actually grab this URL. This is just a link to the actual language itself, or the actual part of the library itself. So we're going to use that as the source for this script so that now we actually have access to this Angular route part of the Angular library. And we're going to save that. And that's good for step one. Now in step two, in app.js, inject ng-route into the module's dependency array so that routing is available for the app to use. So basically, it's not enough just to link the actual library in our view. We need to say to Angular, the app itself, hey, it's time to start using this. I used it, I included it as a script tag, but now you know that it's accessible by you. So what does this do? This dependency that we include here in these brackets will give us access to route providers and route params, which is going to be able to give us access to routing, mapping URLs to certain controllers and certain views. Okay, so let's save that, and that is done for step two. Step three, in app.js, define the app's routes. Okay, use app.config. So what are we doing here? We're setting up our routes. We're mapping certain URLs to certain controllers and certain views. So this is actually going to take a function. And what are we going to pass to this function? We are going to be passing the route provider to this function so that we'll be able to access it as we define our routes. It's just this kind of special all-encompassing object which tells the Angular app, hey, if you provide route provider and you provide a bunch of .when clauses, I'll know what you mean when we go to a certain URL and you want a specific controller and view. So now that we passed it through to this function as a parameter, we have access to it. And we're going to start calling .when on it. Oops. Like that. When, okay, so let me just read the directions here. Map the URL / to the controller, day controller. Okay, so the first argument for a when is the actual URL itself, and it's saying just go to the slash, just go to basically like the root route, like the home page. And what is the home page going to be? It's going to be using the day controller. So the second argument of a when clause is actually an object, and it's going to take controller. And I don't like the spacing here. It's not very clear what's going on, so I'm going to see that looks much better to me. Controller, day controller, and template URL. Use slash day.html. Cool. All right, and notice we need to also provide otherwise redirect to slash. So what does that mean? Well, otherwise here is basically a catch-all where if we enter a URL that doesn't actually exist on our website, like slash cheesy biscuits. Obviously, we haven't defined a slash cheesy biscuits here in our when clauses. So if someone enters that URL, this is actually going to redirect them to the slash route, which will then go back up here and say, all right, perfect. I know exactly where you are, what you need, this day controller, and what type of template you need, this one. Cool. Save that, and step 3 is done. Step 4, create a service to get event data and display it in the app. Visit events.json. It's a JSON object containing a date and an array of events. Let's fetch this data and display it in the app. So let's take a peek at this JSON. Remember, JSON stands for JavaScript object notation, and this is just the way it's a common way. It's actually like the most common way for data to be structured in a database because the machine can easily parse it and humans can actually easily look at it and know what's going on. So see, I know this is one big object. Inside that object is a key of date, another key of events, which points to an array of objects. And these are our event objects that we're eventually going to populate our calendar app with. So let me reread the directions one more time. Visit events.json. It's a JSON object containing a date and an array of events. Let's fetch this data and display it in the app. Create a service named events for getting this data in a file named js/services/events.js. Create a new service named events that gets data from the events API. Include this new JavaScript file in the view as a new script element. All right, so notice here that there is no such thing as a services folder. So let's create one. Services. Oh boy. Services. Perfect. And inside here, we want to create a file called events.js. All right, and we can start defining our service. How do we define services in Angular? Using the .factory method. And the first argument of the factory method is the name of the factory itself. We're going to call it events because that's what the directions say to do. And we're going to have to include this little dependency list here. The only dependency we're actually going to be including is the HTTP, which will give us access to HTTP, which allows us to grab data externally and bring it into our app. Cool. And the second argument, or sorry, the second item in this array is actually the function itself. So we're going to pass in that dependency that we just included. And inside here, we're going to return the result of a GET request. Remember, there's a bunch of different types of GET requests, or sorry, HTTP requests. The most common is a GET request, which is basically like saying, hey, HTTP, I'm going to give you a link. Just read this data to me and give it back to me. So first we need to include the link of the data that we want. I'm going to copy and paste this link because this is where the data that we want is located. So we're bringing this data into our app from an external source, which is pretty awesome. And then upon the successful getting of that information, we are going to call this function, which returns that data. And of course, if all things kind of blow up in our face, that's fine. We'll just do the error as well. Sweet. And is everything kind of closed and ready to go? http.get. URL looks fine. Success, error, app.factories, and it's called events. All right. Okay, so notice here we need to actually include this new JavaScript file in the view as a new script element. So let's go back to our main view. And look, they've got a little section for us for our script, our service scripts. So this is actually in the folder services, and it's called events.js. Sweet. Step 4 is done. Step 5, set up the controller, date controller, and the template views/day.html. In the controller, date controller, let's open that up. Controllers, date controller. Use the events service to load data from the server into the scope.day property. All right. So here is our dependency right here, our dependency array. And let's include the name of our service that we want to use, events. And let's also remember to pass that service into this function so that we can actually use it. Okay, so remember, upon a successful GET request from our service, we want to grab that data. And remember, back in our controller, what we said is this function actually has a bunch of methods to it. And that's why we're able to call .success over here. So this big thing is basically events. And what does it return? It returns two methods, either a success method or a error method, either which returns the data that we get from here. Okay, so what do we want to do with that data? We don't want to return the data itself. We actually want to attach it to our scope at the property of day, as said here, so that we'll have access to it. Righty, and that looks good. Step 2, finish the template views/day.html. Views/day.html. Follow the comment on line 1 and use the date filter to format a day's date. Then follow the comment in line 5 to loop through and display each event. Check out this page and scroll down to the date section for examples of how to use the date filter. Okay, so it wants us to filter it like this. Interesting. So remember, let's look at how our data is coming in. So, okay, so date is the key that we want to grab. And remember, in our controller, we're specifying that in order to grab that data, we need to grab it through the property day. So how do we do that? Over here in our view, day dot, what's the key? Date. Day dot date, but they want us to format it differently. And I actually don't really know how to grab like the day of the week. So filters, date. I need a day of the week. Oh, here we go. Date. Okay, and we need the month. And remember, we need to include the slash here. And then I think it's DB. Let's see what happens when I save that. Did not work. All right, I'm just going to keep on going on here. Oh, you know why? When you copy and paste, formatting of the quotes actually gets screwed up. But oh no, it's still not working. All right, I'm going to continue on. Oh, I'm realizing why things aren't working just yet. Sure, we've set up our routes and we've set up our controllers to match a certain URL and our views to match a certain URL. But we haven't even included the ng-view directive, which basically injects whatever controller/view we specify in our app.config. and makes it visible to us. So I'm going to keep on going. Sorry. Finish the template views, follow the comment, blah, 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 blah. Then follow the comment in line 5. Okay, loop through events and display each one with this HTML. Okay, so let me delete that comment. So ng repeat equals, we're iterating through each event in, and let's remember how the data is structured in the hash that we're currently on. So this is day. Remember, this big object is coming in through our service as data, but we're saying in our controller that we actually are referring to it, or it's located on our scope as a property of day. So day is this big object. We already said day.date is going to give us this information. Now we want day dot events to give us access to this array of each event. So in event in day dot events. So that brings us to this level. So now we're pointing at this array and we're saying, all right, I want to iterate through each object in this array. And look at this, we're actually, because we're using the ng repeat directive, we have access to the index of the current event that we're currently iterating over. And I need to include the name, from, to, where, okay, name. So we're currently iterating over an event, so event.name. And from, event.from, but I notice that it is a timestamp. And we want to make sure that our final product looks similar to what this looks like. So it looks like we're just getting the time and if it's AM or PM. So let me see how to get AM and PM here. This is, by the way, this is a big part of a developer's life, is just kind of going through mounds of documentation trying to figure out the correct way to do this. Oh, here we go. Date.shortTime. Event.from, using the filter date colon apostrophe short time. Date colon apostrophe short time. And we have to do the same thing for 2 here. 2. All right. So that is it for step 5. All right, now in step 6, in the view in the main section, add the div ngView div. And like I said, based on what URL we're currently on, Angular is smart enough to know that, all right, we're on the / route, use this controller and this view and inject it into, once I'm able to open this up, inject it into this section of the HTML. So this, anything within this ng view, or sorry, anything within this container is going to be dynamically rendered based on what URL we're on. And will you look at that? Works like a charm. View the result by visiting blah, blah, blah in the browser. When you visit / a view is constructed by injecting views / day.html into the div ngView div directive and index.html. Yep. Step 8, when a user clicks on an event, she should be able to view more information about that event. Let's set this up next following the same sequence of steps from above. In app.js, add another route. Okay. When a user visits the /id route, and ID, this is just a placeholder. Think of this as a variable. Why we use this colon is through route params, we're actually going to be dynamically able to grab whatever information we pass to the URL. So, and remember back over here in our controller view, which controller view? It was the day.html. Remember, look, we're passing in the index of whatever particular event that we're iterating over. So we actually know which event we want to look at, and we know which data, which event we want to grab, so that we know that, hey, display this data from this particular event, all through route params. So where was I? Okay. When the user visits this, we want to use which controllers? The event controller and the views/event.html. Now, in the controller, event controller, use the event service to load a single event into the scope.event property. Use routeparams.id to access a specific event by its index. All right, so let's include our service here. We already defined our service, so we just need to include it here so the controller knows, hey, time to use it. We're passing in our events, and that way we have access to the success method on that service. Is a callback that takes data from that external source and attaches it to our scope. It says to attach it to the event property. The event property. Load a single event into the scope.event. So scope.event equals data, and which data we want to grab? Well, remember, we want to access first this events property, which actually gives us access to the array of events. Otherwise, if we just call data and then the ID of whatever event that we're currently iterating over, data is equal to this massive object, and there's no indexes of these key values. There's only indexes of this array, which is located at the key of events. So we actually need to say data.events, and via the route params, we'll be able to grab that ID of whatever the person clicked on. We'll be able to grab that ID by saying what? Route params.id. So what we're doing here is we're saying, all right, we know that the data coming back from the events is this massive object. Give me the particular event at this ID, which we get from route params. Okay, step 3, finish the template in views/event.html. Event.html. To display an event, looking at the format of the data in the events API, display an event's name. Okay, so remember, it's accessible by the event property. So, and let's see, event.name, event.name, event.from, using the controller was it? Or sorry, which view? Day view. Short time. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Two. And event.where. That. And let's see what happens. Boom. Let's go back, taco time. Awesome. So it's dynamically rendering the data. It's injecting the particular, let's go back to our app.js. So when we click on a particular event, we're currently on this route. So it's rendering this controller and this view template, and it's basically grabbing all of that information from that JSON object and pumping it in to our view, iterating over each event, and creating these blocks for each event. And it's also in the process making sure that this is an A tag linking to basically a URL of the ID of this event. Now, because we set up this route, that's basically a dynamic route looking for that particular ID, we know exactly which event we need to populate this template URL data with. So we click on this one. This has an ID of 0. When we click on this, it injects this template URL, this view, using that event controller into this ng view directive. And through the event, using route params, we're able to grab dynamically from that URL the ID and attach the particular data from a particular event to the scope in that controller that we specified. And that's why we see the information for Casual Friday when we click on that one, as opposed to pottery painting, and we have that particular information from pottery painting. So let's look at pottery painting, the Art Cafe. Let's see if that's correct, the Art Cafe. All right, and that is it for step 8, and that is it for the whole project. That was a big one. We're kind of all putting it together. We've got our route provider going. We've got our route params going. We also successfully set up a service so that we're grabbing data externally, bringing it in, and dynamically rendering our app based on what users, which URLs users are visiting, and we're able to dynamically generate or populate these the event template based on which event the user clicked on. Alrighty, folks, so that's it. I will see you in the next one. Bye.